One of the concepts of spirituality is the power of your thoughts. That thoughts held in mind create of their kind. When you start to really recognize the thoughts that you're having or the words that you're using, either just in a passing by saying, oh, I'm struggling with, or we never have enough, or those really vicious words that you can say in a fight, what if you recognize that your words create the world in which you see and what you feel and how it shows up for you? What if you decided that you were going to change the way that you used your voice and the thoughts that you had? There is so much power in your voice and in your thoughts. And when we choose to speak and think from love and compassion, the changes in our lives will be amazing. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast, a spiritual path to a happy and healthy life. My name is Reverend Rachel Harrison. I started Recover Your Soul after having profound changes in my life from my recovery of alcoholism, codependency, and control addiction. I was guided to share the tools and principles of spirituality and soul recovery to help others transform their lives as mine was transformed. For us to overcome external circumstances, we need to turn the attention to ourselves, focusing on our inner change and healing. Positive results in our lives will follow. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast. It's Rev Rachel. Thank you for joining me for another episode of this journey into our own soul recovery. Welcome to the community. If you are here and maybe you're just trying us out, maybe you listened to a couple episodes and you like what you hear, this is indeed a community. It isn't just me speaking into a microphone. It is this incredible group of people who came here because they feel like something on the outside isn't going well. Maybe you came because of Al-Anon or codependency or people pleasing or addiction of your own. And you walked through these doors of however spirit brought you here. And you're remembering your wholeness in this journey with me. And that's a gift because I've been so transformed in these last 7 years in my own soul recovery when I was given the message from Spirit to use the words recover your soul. It wasn't just for me to give you that message. It was for me to remember to recover my soul. And this is what I'm sharing with you, is this incredible transformation that's happened in my life. And, it continues to happen. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is the power of our words, the power of our thoughts, from this real perspective of spirituality, that thoughts held in mind create of their kind. That's one of the metaphysical things that people say. What you think and feel and believe is the life that you create. The reality that you experience on the outside is the reality that you're experiencing on the inside. And I've talked about this in a lot of different ways, but not really directly, just full on about the power of our words and also how we use words as weapons in our relationship and the choices that we can make in how we speak to each other. And it goes in a lot of different ways, not only the words that we can use when we're angry or upset and choose different words and different ways of showing up, but when we're talking to somebody that we're worried about, that we're scared about what's happening in their life, what words can we use that are impactful, compassionate, loving, and concerned without being controlling? One of the main things that we're learning in soul recovery is that we're powerless over every single thing outside of ourselves. But that means that the power of our voice and our thoughts is so important. And the other thing that I want to just allow us to talk openly about is that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and there's a lot of energy that's very heavy right now. And so if you are having a bunch of your stuff being brought up, you're not alone. It is happening everywhere. It is happening with all of us because there is just an energetic shift that is much more than what we see on the surface. And it's all the politics. It's all of the old systems. It's what we have thought in our families. It's what's been handed down to us for generations about how we speak to each other and how we speak to ourselves. And it's really shaking up right now. It's a really intense time in our evolution as human beings and as a species. And I know that this past week especially has been really energetically intense for me. And it's been interesting to allow myself to actually feel those feelings and say them out loud and not just push through like I've always done in my life. Just pull your bootstraps up, keep going, Rachel. I've actually rested. I blocked out some of my schedule from coaching. I laid in the sun and just took in the sun rays and noticed that I needed to stop. I needed to stop. And part of that came from this practice of listening to my inner voice and noticing that when we are conscientious of the words that we use to ourselves, you get past the judge and all of the old loop of information that you've been giving yourself for so long. And you can hear the guidance. You can hear the still small voice that's within you that has more subtle messages for you. And this week, the subtle message was just slow down a minute and give yourself some time to rest. But I wanted to share with you this concept of really being mindful about the thoughts and the words that we use, because we are especially in this time right now where we are indeed opening up and changing how we're showing up in the world in such a way that it is affecting so much more than we can possibly understand. And it's fascinating to me as I continue to go down this spiritual journey that I feel a little crazier all the time, to be honest with you. And it's hard for me to actually say out loud sometimes the things that are happening within me and the shifts that are happening within me, because they just seem so outlandish. But they're creating such magnificent changes in how I feel about myself and the relationships that I have with my family, and how I feel about the world and how I'm showing up in the chaos around me. I have to share. I have to share and say it out loud. And as I say in everything that I do, take what you like, take what you need, and leave the rest. If you hear me say something and it's a little too far out in the woo, or it just doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. That's all right. Take what does resonate, the seeds that are being planted, and water them in your own garden. That's the most important thing. Are you ready to step into your soul recovery? Visit the website recoveryoursoul.net to learn more about the 9-step soul recovery process. I hope that you'll join us the first Monday of every month for the free soul recovery support group on Zoom, where we learn more about soul recovery and connect with each other. If you'd like to work directly with me to move through the 9-step soul recovery process, I'm here for you, but you can also choose to work the steps on your own with individual modules intended to support you to work at your own pace and on your own time. And if you want even more soul recovery, join us for the Recover Your Soul bonus podcast for Patreon members and Apple Podcast subscribers, where I interview amazing people sharing soul recovery tips for us and also do spiritual book studies. You can also find daily inspiration on Facebook and Instagram and join our private Facebook community. Visit the website for more information, links, and registration for everything. Back to the episode. I want to talk first about the concept of metaphysics and the law of attraction and the laws of spirituality, and that there's more and more science that's backing up these concepts that have been swirling around in mainstream for the past 50 years. But if you really think about when the first yogis started coming over to the United States, it's about 100 years ago, when Eastern philosophy started moving into Western philosophy, and there was a break in this concept of religion, and that at first it seemed like you had to be the church and these were the rules, and there was a lot of fear. And then a lot of this sort of more esoteric, metaphysical stuff started coming in, and people really attached to it, especially with law of attraction in terms of prosperity and finances. And there's some really, really great old books from like 100 years ago that are around this concept of like, if you think it, it will come. And that was a real foundation in changing and shifting a lot of lack mentality, a lot of fear mindset that had been going on for a long time, handed down generation after generation. I was listening to a story this morning in one of the books that I'm listening to, and it was that whole you came from Ellis Island and we came from Ireland, or we came from this culture, or we came from this society and we never had enough, or somebody was always against us, or we were always persecuted. And all of that mindset got handed down again and again and again and again. They talk about how in epigenetics that actually our DNA has these different layers of codes, and they can either be switched on or off depending on whether you in your being inside switches them on or off. And some of that DNA, really intense ancestral trauma, gets handed down generation after generation. And how we speak to each other, how we speak to ourselves, what's acceptable behavior, what's acceptable to need and want from each other or from yourself. And we're in a time right now, that's this big energy shift where things are really breaking up and changing, and we're starting to look at things from an entirely different perception. And we're ready to actually break away from and change your epigenetics to change not only you and the healing that's happening within yourself, but for generations to come, you're opening up a new way of being. And this idea that has been around for a while, this past 100 years, but really the last 50 years, this intense awareness around the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts. And you can really use it like The Secret that came out, I think it was 20 years ago that the movie The Secret came out. And it was mind-blowing for a lot of people, this idea that you could visualize and want for and get. But I have talked about this in other podcasts, that sometimes we get caught up in this idea of we want things from the outside to make us happy. You can visualize and want a car, and you think about and you visualize that car enough and you do the work. You don't sit on your ass and wait for the car to show up. You listen to the guidance that says, this is what we're going to do. This is the job that you have. And crazy enough, so often, eventually you get the thing that you wanted. But what I want us to talk about in soul recovery is the power of our thoughts in terms of who we are as souls and as human beings, and how it relates to our relationships with other people, but mostly about how it relates to our relationship with ourselves. Even people who are so conscientious of their thoughts, there is always a spin of what's going on in your mind in the back. And what I think is so powerful that, Eckhart Tolle, one of the things that he brought in that was so impactful when he wrote The Power of Now 20 years ago, again, like all this really intense change of perspective and perception that happened in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, different levels of it. And now it's just accelerated. But he really gave this new idea that we are witnessing ourselves, that we aren't our thoughts, that you are not the thoughts that you think. Your brain is just thinking them. And of course your brain is thinking, because that's its job. That's what brains do. And I think this is the part that's so fascinating, is to start to really pay attention to the thoughts that you think and the ones that you attach to and the ones that you create, which you end up receiving in your life. So even with some awareness of your thoughts, there's still this backlog of the subconscious that is rolling around in there. And that's part of what we do in the soul recovery process. Step 3 in the soul recovery process is to identify and acknowledge the unhealthy patterns, beliefs, and stories that are shaping our life and our behavior, those things that are in our subconscious, that are the wheels that are spinning, so that we can start to recognize why they're in there spinning. What are they protecting? And so I'm not going to go into that because that is other episode. But when we don't know that there's this sort of reactionary, this mechanism that just shoots out words, shoots out thoughts that we don't even know what they are or why we're saying them, or they're reactive. We are at a place in our lives now and in our spiritual journey where you can start to slow down and witness and be curious about what those are, and then recognize that every thought that you think, every word that you say has power. I've had clients that are honest and share that the relationships that they have with their significant others can be really verbally painful and abusive on both sides. And that the most important part is that we're honest about what part we're doing, that we're always participating on both sides. And even if somebody is more aggressive on their end, we participate in how we react to it. We participate in what we say. We participate in how we shut down or whatever the system is. And all it takes is one person to change the energy to change those systems and those dynamics. I think I've said this before, that when Rich and I first started dating, we made 2 agreements. The first agreement was that we would never lie to each other, that even if it was painful and even if it was hard, we would always tell the truth. Now, there has definitely been times where there has been omission, which is another form of not being honest, but we're following in the footsteps of my parents, which was if you asked a direct question, you would get a direct answer, always a truthful answer. And Rich and I have worked out some of those places where there was omission or there wasn't full disclosure of what was happening. And if you know our story, part of that is Rich continuing to drink and not sharing with me that he was drinking, but I also wasn't asking him straight out. So we have mostly held on to that agreement that we had with each other. The second agreement that we made that I'm so grateful for was that we made an agreement to never say words we didn't mean. And what I mean by that is not to be in a fight and say, F you, or I hate you, or you a-hole, or, whatever the words were. Somehow we knew from the very beginning, I'd never been somebody who did that kind of thing anyway, but somewhere in our beginning relationship, we made a solid agreement to never do that. Now, I've told this story, I think, maybe in the podcast, I've definitely told it to clients, that there were many a time where Rich and I were in the midst of something really intense, and I thought those things fiercely and intensely. I mean, they were just everything inside of my head was yelling and screaming, painful, hurtful, mean, awful things, because in that moment, that's what I felt. But you can't take words back. That's one of the things about words that are so powerful. In that moment, when you're using words as a weapon, they are a weapon that harms. And you can't take them back, even if you didn't mean them. Because 90% of the time, you don't mean it. You feel it at the time, but you don't mean it. And it destroys and deteriorates and erodes the safety and the vitality of the relationship. And so the gratitude that I have is in our 30-something years together, I think only once or twice have the words slipped out on either side where we said those kinds of things. And again, just even the concept of thinking them in those moments was not all that great, but it was the best that I had in those moments because I was in so much pain. And it's taken me all these years of soul recovery and real deep internal work to be able to name different feelings, to be able to say different things, right? So if the first thought is F you and you don't say it out loud, but you think it, and then you can actually go one layer under and you think, what is it that really is saying? It's really saying, you're hurting me. I want to protect myself. And then if you go one layer under, then you can say, I'm scared. I feel isolated. I feel confused. Those are the real feelings. And those are actually valuable feelings to think. And they're valuable potentially to say instead of hurtful words. But with the clients that I've worked with where they've had the courage, in all honesty, to share that these are words that they use or that other people use in their relationship and that they respond back with their own version of hurtful words. One of the first agreements I ask is, can they make an agreement to not say those things out loud? If you really love somebody, if you really care about the relationship, then the harm that happens in the relationship from using those kinds of words it's not worth it. It's never worth it. The dagger is never worth it. Trying to hurt each other isn't going to heal or benefit anything. That's control. It's another level of control. And for the most part, the people who stay in touch with me or continue to work with me have said that it's been a huge piece of changing the dynamic in the relationship. And this is just a tiny piece of what I wanted to share with you today, but I think it's an important piece because then if you can make that first agreement, or if someone's saying words to you like that, to be able to say, I have a request, not in the middle of the fight. Don't say this in the middle of the fight. In the middle of the fight, if they're saying those words to you, you can have a boundary that says, I will not be spoken to that way. Those are not words that are okay with me. And I'm going to leave. I'm going to take a break. That is a healthy response to have. But then when you are cooled down and you're talking, to be able to say, can we make an agreement to not talk to each other like that? Even when you're angry, even when this is going on, there's got to be another way that we can talk. Let's just not say them out loud. Because what it ends up doing is it pours anger and fear and upset. It's an energy that is palpable. It's an energy that's real. It's a dense, low energy. The energy waves of that kind of upset are low and dense, and they attract more low, dense energy. And one of the things that's so interesting is when you really start looking at feelings, each feeling has an energy vibration, and those low, dense energy vibrations have so much, they're sticky, they're dark, they're really hard to pull yourself out of. It's like quicksand, and they attract more of the same. So even if I'm not in a big fight with Rich or somebody else, and I'm having those conversations that we have in our heads with the other people, which I do have an episode somewhere, some seasons ago, that it's about not having conversations with the people who are not in the room, right? Because we end up having these arguments with people who aren't even there. Those thoughts that you think without them there, that are those critical, mean, horrible thoughts, those thoughts have power. They have power, and they have an energy that radiates. And it's not any energy that's around you coming to yourself and understanding more about yourself. These are heavy laden protections that are really around fear and fight. And so if I'm in a situation where my feelings are really hurt and maybe something's happened, I'll have that quick initial thing that's like, oh my God, he's being such an a-hole. And then I'll stop myself. And this is what I hope that you get in soul recovery. It's never about beating yourself up. It's about staying conscious and awake, coming back to yourself in that moment. And you're like, ooh, wow, I am going to that name calling place. And I really want to actually attend to what's going on with me, because that's where the power is. Because you're giving your power away every time you say those kinds of things to somebody, whether it's in person or in your mind, or when they're not even there and you're saying it. You are determining that you're being okay or not okay, or how you feel is based on them and their responses, their reactions. You're powerless over all those things. And we have these intense feelings within ourselves that don't let us sink down deeper into the layers that heal. They keep us tied up and tethered with these intense, fighting, bitter feelings. And so if I'm in that moment where I'm like, wow, he's really being an a-hole, then I can do the detachment. I'm powerless over what he's saying right now. I'm powerless over what he's thinking. I'm powerless over his energy. I'm powerless over his attitude. I'm powerless over how he's talking to me. And I breathe. And then I do the boundaries. Do I need to not be in the situation? If it's me thinking about him later on, I try to think a positive thought. I bring in a reminder of the wholeness of who he is. I leave behind some of that bitterness and really that energy that is really protecting me. And I notice that it's a protection. It's trying to keep my heart safe by battling. What I really want you to understand is that these thoughts have energy, right? So if I can attend to myself, If I can be kind to myself and I can really go underneath and I can say, I really felt like not seen right there, or I felt like my idea wasn't recognized, or I'm feeling scared because it's around a subject that is not one of my favorite subjects. What's coming up for me is money always ends up being kind of this touchy subject between Rich and I. And the truth is it's substantially better than it ever was, but I catch myself getting really tight, right? And whatever his reaction is, I'm protecting myself. It doesn't even matter what his reaction is. I'm nervous. I don't like to talk about money. It makes me uncomfortable. That's my work to be done. When we're talking about Alex, we had a conversation the other day about Alex that started to kind of go astray. And I was mindful of the words that I used. Because if we're in those conversations and we're using attacking words, or we're using accusatory words, or we're using the words that we've used in the past that will flare them up, the words are creating the energy. They're creating the scenario. It's becoming what it is. And it was so amazing in this conversation we were having about Alex, which was, it was kind of ramping up. And I stopped and I said, I'm sorry. I take responsibility. I'm definitely feeling reactive. And I just so wish, I had tears in my eyes. I so wish that there was a different way to talk about this. And he said, me too. Me too. And it just shifted how we ended up talking about it. When we choose thoughts that are kind and loving, even when you're in pain, a shift will happen that is, maybe you don't see it on the outside, but it's a shift that happens within you, and your peace and your wholeness and your ability to be present in yourself, in your sovereign self, is the only thing you control in the first place. But your energy changes and your vibration changes, and the thoughts that you have create the life that you see and that you experience. I almost never have hurtful, mean thoughts about anybody, but my sort of, my muse is Rich in all of this, right? So I used to have a lot of, he's being an a-hole today thoughts. I don't really think those thoughts anymore, because now I actually can witness that if he's being reactive, or he's being, easily aggravated by people, there's something going on with him. Like, what if I moved into compassion? What if the thought that was in my head thought, I'm sending him positive energy. I hope that he feels better. I'm sorry that he's having a hard day. I'm going to, maybe I'll ask him about it later. Or most of the time in those situations, I just keep my mouth shut and I just let him talk, because he just needs to talk about it, because he's actually feeling agitated because there's something going on with him. But I don't let it become sticky on me. And I know this is complicated, because I know a bunch of you have people in your lives where you're like, there's no way that I can't attack back. And I want you to really think about that, because you have control over yourself always, always. And the thoughts that we think and the words that we say, if they are as if you're writing a letter to the universe and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm asking for, this is what I'm calling for, this is how I want it. It's like a letter to Santa, that you write this letter based on the words and the thoughts that you have, and you will receive those things. Are these the ones you're going to pick? Are these the thoughts that you're going to choose? And I'll tell you what, one of the number one things that I think is so important is those thoughts that we think about ourselves. The thoughts that we think about ourselves. I shared with you in the last podcast that my health and getting fit and losing weight has been a journey that I've had for the last 20 years. And when I'm not in a spiritually fit place, which thank God mostly I am, but if I'm in a moment where I'm not awake, I'm not conscious, I have some pretty mean thoughts about myself, pretty unkind things to say about myself. How can you let yourself go? Who do you think you are? You're so fat, or you're old. Listen, God, just listen to how awful those things are. I don't even like to say them out loud, even to use them as examples, because those thoughts are so powerful. So you can have concern about yourself or concern about people in your lives, but the words that you use when you talk to them, the words that you use when you talk to yourself, create an energy, and you're writing that letter to the universe. 99% of the time, I look at myself and I say, I love myself so much. I'm so grateful for this body. How can I take care of her? What can I do better to take care of her? And when I'm in that space, I think to myself, I'm going to do some sit-ups today. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do some light weight training, some exercises, because she wants that. But if I'm saying to her, oh, how ugly you are and how fat you are and how that energy to take care of yourself is much diminished. Can you feel the energy? It's so low, right? And when you're talking to somebody who is struggling, I talked about Bodhi in his situation, and he was sober. He had a totally clean sobriety for a while. So proud of him. So proud of him. And then at his birthday, he had a couple margaritas, and then it sort of started to fall off, where he was having a few more drinks here and a few more drinks there. And, luckily he's not in a place where he's fallen apart, or it's told the wheels have not fallen off the bus, but he's coming to me and he's actually sharing what's going on with him. And if I let those thoughts, the words and the thoughts that we think have power. And if my thoughts are consumed with this idea that there's something wrong with my kids, that there's something wrong with him, if he doesn't get sober, that he's going to fall apart, those words are creating that energy. You're sending that letter to the universe, bringing that energy in. But instead, the words and the thoughts I have to myself are, I see him making good choices. I love him. I know this is his own journey to have. I see him choosing what's right for him. I love him to make the mistakes that he might need to make. The awarenesses, sometimes slip or a huge fall is what their soul needs. And then when I talk to him, I'm mindful of the words that I'm using. I'm always so careful to not have any shame or any guilt, a lot of curiosity. And at the same time, I'm cheering him on to make what I think would be a great choice. Choose sobriety. So much better over here. But I'm also saying, I totally get it. I get that you're young and it's hard because there's a bunch of people around you. And he's just saying, yeah, I'm really trying to figure it all out. And I'm proud of myself for staying on task with no drugs and just drinking with friends and trying to keep my boundaries. And I just said, we're addicts, and the addict is a beast. And I see you making the right choices. The thoughts and the words hold power. And the same goes for money. Like if you say, we never have enough, we're always struggling, we're always short, we never are going to make it. You're writing a letter to the universe that says, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make it. I never have enough. And I think I've said this in the podcast before. I'm remembering saying it out loud, but I'm going to say it again, which is, I think it was an AA meeting. And somebody was saying, when you use the word struggle, you're telling yourself to struggle. I'm struggling right now. I'm in a dark place right now. You're naming those choices. You can name the feelings without claiming struggle, dark place, never enough. I never get what I need. I never. It's really hard for the universe to bring you all those beautiful things when you're basically continually sending it letters saying, I don't want those things. What I'm bringing to myself is the energy of lack, not enough, hate, grievance, mistreatment, anger, rage. And it is not about, and it's never about dismissing how you feel or trying to do some sort of spiritual bypass where you pop up to the next level and you just pretend like everything's Pollyanna, because that's crap. That's not how that works. It's about really checking in with yourself and getting to those subconscious beliefs and stories that are keeping you in these low vibrations and these low places, because they're coming to be revealed and they're coming to be completely released and exposed and cleared, so that the thoughts come more easily to be kind, loving thoughts, so that the reality on the outside reflects a cleaner, healthier reality on the inside. And again, just as a close, I want you to know that I get how complicated some of your lives are. I get it. I'm working with many of you. And on the calls that we have once a month, the first Monday of the month, I can feel the energy of the reality of what's happening. And so I want to just impart even more intensely that when you are really in the intense, dark, complicated situations of your life, your thoughts are even more important to attend to yourself and how you're feeling and what you can resource for yourself, and to choose thoughts and words that are attracting and calling for the life that you want to live, and that they should always underneath have a foundation of love. The incredible power of forgiveness and love and compassion cannot be stressed enough. And gratitude, no matter what's happening, opens your heart in ways that nothing else can. Healing comes in those moments when we stop being in grievance and upset and rage and blame, and we attend to how we are feeling, and we choose words that are conscious and kind and compassionate to ourselves and to others. Those give you the strength to make it through anything, any situation that you're in. You are here as a soul to be in the earth school, in your curriculum, for your challenges, and you have so much more than you give yourself credit for. You can get through so much more. You are so much wiser and smarter and more talented and more able to be present with what's hard than you can possibly imagine, especially when you start being conscientious of the words and the thoughts that you choose. Talk to yourself in kind, loving ways. Talk to yourself as if you were your own best friend, or the way that you would talk to a child when what you're saying to them is, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, I love you, you've got this. The number one thing that I say to my kids, no matter what's going on in their lives, is, I see you, and I see that this is hard, but I know that you got so much more in there than you give yourself credit for. And I trust that you're going to make the choices that are right for you. And in the end, I'm handing them over to the universe, and inside, I'm seeing those things as true. I'm not saying them as crap or as just buttery words to try to control it. I feel them to the depth of my being. And then that gives me peace of mind to trust and truly have faith that they can indeed handle whatever comes to them. They're in their curriculum of life. Isn't that all interesting? And as always, I encourage you to work the 9 steps, either by working the steps on your own on the modules on the website, join me for one-on-one coaching, come to a retreat. This is you coming back to yourself. This is you using your power, your sovereignty, to make choices within yourself that will change how you see the world around you. Until next time, namaste. Thank you for listening, and I hope that helps support your soul recovery process. Just a reminder that every Friday is the Recover Your Soul bonus podcast. This podcast is for Patreon members and Apple Podcast subscribers. And not only do you get an incredible interview or book study that comes with being part of that community, but your subscribing helps support this podcast and the Recover Your Soul community. If you want to listen to those bonus episodes but can't subscribe right now, do know that you can be a free Patreon member and have access for limited time to new episodes. Visit the website recoveryoursoul.net or check out the show links below for coupons and information for upcoming events. I thank you for sharing this podcast with your friends and family. I thank you for giving it 5 stars, and the reviews that are left bring tears to my eyes. I am honored to be part of your life. Together, we can do the work that will recover your soul. The Recover Your Soul podcast and its content is for educational purposes only and is not allied or representative of any organizations or religions. It's based on the opinions and experience of Reverend Rachel Harrison. Recover Your Soul claims no responsibility to any persons or entity for any liability, loss, damage, or cause alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of its use. Applications or interpretations of the information represented herein. Take what you need and leave the rest.